This project is a perfect example of why I often choose to leave some natural wood and paint the rest. I have to credit some of my subscribers who responded to some comments that were criticizing my choice to paint vintage furniture. They actually summarized it quite well, better than I could, and it prompted me to want to take some time in this video to help you understand what goes into making a decision about whether to restore or to paint. So please enjoy this footage of me scrubbing this extremely filthy furniture while I explain. I'm Amy. I build and revive furniture, often adding something new to something old. I'm sharing tips, tricks, and methods on how to give old pieces a new lease on life. Welcome to my shop. Most of the pieces I work on are made between the 1950s and the 1970s. They don't quite fit the typical definition of antique. An antique, as I understand it, means it's at least 100 years old. Vintage, I think that's a looser term that describes something that's less than 100 years old. Regardless, I do research to make sure I'm not devaluing an item by refinishing it. And if I need to confirm my research, I consult a friend who's an extremely knowledgeable antiques dealer, and he owns a highly respectable auction house in my area. Also, if an item is in pristine condition, I usually don't work on it at all. I leave it for someone else. The pieces I end up acquiring, well, let's just say there's wear and tear consistent with its age. Often there's damage such as missing veneer, stains, water damage, there's broken or missing hardware. Fixing damage or replacing parts can be difficult, expensive, or in some cases, beyond my capabilities. While I'm always challenging myself to learn new skills, there are some things that I know are just beyond me. And maybe I don't want to take a risk on a project that'll be sitting in someone's home for the next few decades. Or maybe I do know how to make that repair, but it just doesn't make financial sense. Have you ever been told that your car or your washing machine is just too expensive to fix and you need to just replace it? That's where I apply the following rule. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. Refinishing furniture is my full-time job, so I'm always trying to keep my emotions in check and think about the dollars and cents in every project. Yes, I do tend to fall in love with these pieces, and I can see their potential, but I have to address some important factors too. How much have I invested in acquiring the furniture? Plus, what am I going to spend in materials such as finish strippers, sandpaper, paints and stains, tarps and painter's tape? Then I have to calculate how much time I'm going to spend from beginning to end. And honestly, I don't know why some people bristle at this, but I have to be able to, turn a profit. If I don't cover my costs and get compensated for my time and effort, I don't get to do this work that I absolutely love. And speaking of sales, I live in coastal Florida. Lately, it seems that people have discovered our little secret down here and have been moving here in droves. And I'm a little biased, but I can see why. It's beautiful here. The year-round warm weather and the beaches can make us feel like we're always on vacation. Anyway, the coastal vibe is very popular. Yes, there are some older, traditional-looking homes, but they're not as numerous as you'd find, say, in the Northeast or the Midwest. A lot of people are moving down here from those regions. They've had their traditional homes with the traditional dark wood furniture, and they're ready for something new. I'm not saying that's true for everyone in my market, but it is the prevailing style. And look, sales don't lie. My combination wood and light neutral paint color, I'm sure that may change someday, but right now, it's selling. I'm gonna pull these bases off and make new ones to help update the look. So I head to my favorite lumber store to see what they have. What I'm looking for is a reasonably priced hardwood, such as oak, maple, or ash, that's already milled to 1.5 by 1.5 inches. I know I can save money by buying what's called rough cut lumber, but what that means is I would be flattening it, planing it, then ripping it down to the final size I need. This takes more time and skill than I have, and honestly, the folks at Anderson are better at it than I am. So I loaded up almost 50 linear feet of ash and headed back to the shop. Before I tackle the new bases, I'm going to remove the old hardware, and no, I'm not keeping it. Maybe it's just me, but the combination of these stubby legs, the design of the cabinet doors and drawers, and this hardware, it was giving me pirate vibes. Cabinet doors can be so finicky, so not only do I not remove them unless I absolutely have to, I also make sure to use the same exact hardware like these little magnetic catch plates. Don't ask me how I got this thing flipped upside down by myself, but I didn't film it because the safety patrol would come after me, but my husband wasn't home and I had to keep moving, and I didn't die. Now that I've got it flipped over, I can see how the old base is constructed, and it's attached to the frame with countersunk screws. And now that I've got a nice flat surface to work with, I can start measuring for the new base. I make all the cuts on my miter saw, but I usually leave about an inch or so that I can cut to the final dimension on my table saw. This isn't always necessary, but for me, I don't have the nicest miter saw, and the cuts on my table saw just seem to be straighter. Every piece is marked so that I don't get confused when I'm assembling them. The legs are about 6 inches tall and I want them to have a nice taper, so I'm using my tapering jig to make these cuts. This is tedious because there are 18 legs in this project, but again, the extra effort is worth it. The legs already had a nice rounded edge profile, but I need to do something with the tapered edge I just cut, so I have a spare leg to test out a few options on my router. I could just do a round edge profile, but the design of the cabinet doors has some sharp edges too, so I thought it would look interesting to do a chamfer edge. I'm going to assemble the bases with pocket holes and glue. The blue tape I used to mark each piece also indicated the prettiest side, which I want facing forward. So I just flip each piece over and drill 2 pocket holes on the back on each end. Here I'm choosing legs that go best with the cross piece it's going to be next to. I don't know if anyone really notices that level of detail, but I do. I think it looks nice when there's some continuity to the wood grain patterns. To assemble them, I use glue and screws. The clamps are extremely important though. They ensure the pieces don't come out of alignment when I'm driving the screws. To attach the base to the dresser, I'm going to use glue and countersunk screws. You don't have to countersink the screws, but I think it looks better if you do. Because this dresser is so heavy, you can see I added a few cross support pieces too. And thankfully, my husband was home to help me flip it back over. These pieces had a sheet of glass on the tops, so the finish was in pretty good shape, but the color looked orange to me, so I'm using a chemical stripper to remove the old finish. Another step I always do before painting is to plug the old hardware holes and drill new ones. The new hardware handles are 6 1/4 inches long, and my cheap plastic template maxes out at 5 inches. So I'm going to make a quick template out of 1/4 inch plywood. To plug the old hardware holes, I use Bondo, which is a 2-part wood filler that dries rock hard and sands really smooth. But you have to work in small batches because it sets up really fast. So even if I did want to strip this down to the natural wood, we did have some missing pieces here, and I was actually able to find them. They came right off, and you can see here that they are plastic. This is not real wood, and you can see in this little spot right here, when you sand off this like faux wood finish, what you're gonna get is this just like plain brown plastic. So there's really no way to return this back to a natural wood look. Finally, I settle in for a very, very long sanding session. All the surfaces getting painted are scuff sanded with 150 grit, and the tops are getting sanded to 180 grit for now. I taped off the tops and the bases to get it ready for painting. I also gave this area of my shop a thorough vacuuming and wiped down the furniture with a microfiber cloth, then a tack cloth to get rid of any lingering dust. I'm applying Zinsser bin shellac with my HVLP sprayer. I work on a lot of dark wood furniture, such as red oak, walnut, and mahogany, and they're very prone to what's called tannin bleed-through. It's when the color of the wood shows through the primer and paint no matter how many coats you apply. This primer is the best at blocking that. Plus, it dries super quickly and sands very smooth. I'll do at least 2 coats of primer before sanding the final coat smooth. Painting inside cabinet boxes with my specific sprayer can be a challenge. And if the cabinets are really small, I just have to paint by hand, which I hate. But if I can get my sprayer in there, I've learned the best way to do it. First, get the back wall of the cabinet, then do each side, and then do the bottom last. Honestly, I really love the natural color of the tops with the new paint color, so after a final sand with 220, I'm just going to clear coat them, and I'll stain the new bases to match. For the clear coat, I'm using a satin polyurethane, and I'm only going to apply it to the tops and the bases. The paint that I use does not require a top coat. So, here's a reminder of where we started. And here's how it looks now. So I'm curious, would you have kept those plastic pieces on the cabinet doors, or would you have pulled them off? Let me know in the comments below. This set sold within a few days to a lovely couple that just moved into a new home. I love that this quality furniture will be used and enjoyed for many more years to come. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.